So the next thing we're going to be doing is rigging our hand. So we're going to select our joint tool. You'll find that under character here, and there it is. So let's hop into our right view, and we can zoom in here to the bottom of our arm. Let's turn on our grid, and we can hold down control and just click, and that's going to create the first joint. Now let's just turn off this root null, because it's just creating a root null there when we create a new joint. So I'm just going to turn that off, and now we can continue on. So I'm going to hold down control, I'm going to go up to the wrist, hold down control and click again. Now as you can see, that's kind of bent. We want it to be aligned, so undo that, and let's make it so that shift, when we hold down shift, it draws in an aligned joint. So it'll be aligned to our start point here. So I'm going to hold down shift about here. Well, it could be anywhere, it could be over here. But I'm going to go in the middle and hold down shift. And there we have our wrist joint. So if I just undo that, I did say it could be anywhere. We could go over here. That wouldn't work. It's only the second time that it will be aligned. I'm holding down shift. Remember, we said shift here to draw a line. I'm clicking anywhere, and it's drawing it in a straight line. So just keep that in mind. It's only going to be aligned after the second time you click, if it has a joint to align to, that is. So we need to make sure that the first one we put in is more or less in the center point, down at the bottom of our arm, and then the second point here, which is going to be the wrist, is also in the center. So I'm just holding down control and I'm clicking. Now we can click anywhere and hold down shift around here. I'm going to aim for the knuckles, and that'll align the joint to the joint beneath. And now we're going to go over here to the left to start setting up the bones or the joints for our index finger. Now if I hold down shift and click, it's going to draw a line straight up. So we want to go across the way. So we're going to hold down control this time. You can change the effect the control will have. So right now it's set to draw. So if I hold down control, and I'm going to zoom in a bit, try and get it to the center of our index finger, holding down control and clicking. And now we need to hold down control again to add a joint here where our index finger meets our hand. So I'm going to hold down control and I'm going to click again. Now we can use shift and it'll align to the joint underneath. So we're going to go for around the middle point of the index finger, and then we're going to go up to the tip and hold down shift again. Okay, so next we want to do the same for our middle finger. So first, without holding control or shift, we need to select this joint here, and now we can hold down control and we can draw the first joint in there. This time we can hold down shift and it'll align. Hold down shift, and we want this joint to go up just slightly higher than our index finger there, to about here, and then up again to our tip. Now you can see this isn't perfectly straight, so we could just, let's undo that. Let's try that again. So let's just go up along here, try and get it as straight as we can for the first click, and there we go, about there. And I'm going to hold down shift this time, slightly above the index joint, and then holding down shift up to the tip. Now let's select this joint again and hold down control this time, and then let's click around here. Let's go up, create this base joint here of our pinky. Make sure it's going up as straight as you can get it from this joint, like so. And the pinky is, the midpoint of the pinky is going to be lower than the midpoint of the index, just ever so slightly lower. I'm holding down shift this time, and now I'm going to go straight up to the tip. Okay, so let's jump into perspective and have a look at this setup. Okay, so our bones are looking pretty good. What we could do is go back into our right view and just see if we can improve on it a little bit. So I'm just going to grab my move tool, and no, actually I'm going to go back into my joint tool, select this joint here, select my move tool, and make sure that model mode is selected, and then we can just kind of straighten it out. It looks a bit bent, and this one as well. If we use 7, we can actually just move single joints by themselves. If we're not holding 7, we're moving the joint and all of its children. So if we want to just move one joint by itself, just use 7 to do that. So I just want to straighten these out here. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. So now we can go and do the joints for our thumb. But before we do that, I'm just going to name the joints that we have already created. So let's go here, and we can call this joint arm. And without hitting enter, just hit down on your D-pad, or on your just hit your down arrow on your keyboard. Down on your D-pad. Too much playing The Last of Us 2 recently. So now we can call this one wrist. Hit down on your keyboard, and then we can call this one, we don't need to call this one anything actually, because we're not going to be using it. So we can just double click into joint 4. Double click on that, and we can call this pinky. Hit down on your keyboard, and then let's call this pinky mid. And hit down again on your keyboard, and we'll call this pinky tip. Now let's go for joint 3 here, and we can call this middle. Let's hit down on our keyboard and call this middle mid. And hit down on our keyboard, we can call this middle tip. Joint 3, we can call, we don't need to call joint 3 anything, so leave that as is. Joint 4, we're going to call this index. Down again on the keyboard, index mid, and down on the keyboard for the index tip. Okay, so it's looking pretty good. Now we can go about creating our thumb joints. So let's go back into our joint tool. You can go to your recent tools here and grab your joint tool from there. Now we want to select this joint here, because this is where our thumb joint is going to come out of. And then we can hold down Control when we want to create a new joint. So let's go about here, hold down Control, and that'll create a new joint for us. Let's go to about the midpoint of our thumb. Gonna go about here, hold down Control, and up to the tip then, holding down Control each time. So we can call this one thumb. We can call this one thumb mid, and this one thumb tip. Okay, so now we can tidy up our joints even further. So let's zoom in here, and I want to grab my, what's this now? This is my index tip. So index tip is here, and I'm going to drag this up so that it's right at the tip. And we could actually just select this and all of its its parents up to the index here by middle mouse clicking on the index. Actually, we want to select joint 3 and all of its children. So middle mouse click on joint 3, and then we can just kind of center that up in the index finger, like that. Let's do the same for the middle finger. So I just want to get the middle tip and make sure it is in fact at the tip of the finger. Now that's bone sticking out a bit there. Don't worry about that for now. We will fix that in a minute. They both are. And this one is close enough to the tip, the pinky. So we'll go pinky tip, move that up a little bit more. They're all sticking out, so we need to just push them all back. And pinky, the bones for the pinky could be a little more centered into the pinky. So we can grab joint 3, middle mouse click on joint 3, it'll select joint 3 and all of its children, and then we can just move that in slightly. Okay. Now we want to move these back. So if we hop into our top view, we want to move all of our joints back along the x-axis there so that they're more, well, so that they're in the right position. So what we can do is middle mouse click on the arm joint. That'll select all of our joints because the arm is the highest parent there, and we can move that right back so that we're getting our finger joints right in the center of our fingers. Now let's focus on our thumb joints. So if we grab our thumb and everything below it by middle mouse clicking, actually we can go to thumb mid and middle mouse click on that to grab thumb mid and the thumb tip. Move those in. Now let's just grab the thumb tip, move that one in. Let's go back to thumb mid, move back a little bit, and thumb tip. Kind of like that, I guess. Something like that is looking good. Let's just make sure that this bone isn't protruding out of the geometry. Let's do the same for all of them. So for the index tip, this could be closer to the tip. And for the middle tip, again, it's not right at the tip. And the pinky tip, again, we'll move that up right to the tip. Okay, so that's all of our joints set up and named. All of the ones that we need to be named are named anyway. So what we can do now is we can actually drag the ones that we're going to be using the most onto our viewport here, onto our user interface. So we'll be able to access them quickly without having to go, where is it? Oh, it's here. So let's say we're going to be using the thumb a lot. So let's just drag the thumb over here into our viewport and then release. And our thumb mid we're going to be using a lot also. We're going to be using our index a lot and our index mid. Now the reason I went to index instead of going to the next one on the list, which is pinky, is because, well, just for my own organization, thumb is coming after the pinky, so it makes sense. We're going to be using the middle finger a lot. Let's drag that in, and the middle mid. And we're going to be using the pinky. So we can drag that in and pinky mid also. So now we can just grab these joints just by clicking on them. So that's really handy. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to bind our joints to our geometry. So before we do that, I'm just going to make a duplicate of this. I'm holding down Control, dragging it down. I'm going to hide this off, because what I want to do is I want to grab this and its child, middle mouse click to do so. we're going to right click and we're going to connect objects and delete. So that's going to make it, you know, we're not going to be able to go back and edit this object anymore. That's why I created a duplicate, just in case we need to go back. Let's hide all those ones off there. So before I do connect objects and delete, I'm going to select the subdivision surface object, and I'm going to increase the subdivisions here up to 3. And now we can middle mouse click here, right click, and go to connect objects and delete. Now we have our hand geometry. Now it's ready to bind up with our joints. So we don't need our arm inside of this root null, so we can just drag that out. And let's delete that root null. Now we can drag our joints back up to the top of our object manager there. It's not a necessity, just to keep everything organized. And next we can bind our joints to our geometry. So middle mouse click on the arm, that'll select all of the children, and hold down control and select the hand geometry. Go into the character option here and then go down to commands and click bind. So that's created some skin for us there and a weight expression tag, which is great. So now we can test this out. So we can use our quick selections here. So if we want to move our thumb, we can click on it. Now this is our thumb base, we'll say. Let's go to rotate, and we can now rotate that. So you can see that the geometry is looking really janky there. Not pretty at all. We're going to fix that though, don't worry. Let's try our thumb mid. So not as bad, but still not great. Let's go for our index. Let's rotate that. That isn't so bad, but again, not great. We don't want to see all this jinkiness there. Let's try our index mid. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's clean. Looks like a nice fold in the skin there. It looks well. And let's go for our middle finger. We can test this out. Yeah, so that's looking a bit janky there as well. Getting a bit of weirdness in the geometry there as well. We can also try our middle mid. That's not as bad. Anyway, we're going to fix this so that we get some nice smooth bending of our geometry. So how do we do that? We need to go into our weight expression tag. What we can do is hold down shift and double click. That'll open up our weight manager. Let's go to our joints tab, and we can see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 joints. So we need to remember that number. We have 17 joints. So if we select all of them, so I just clicked on the first one, went down to the bottom one, hold down shift and just click. That'll select all of our joints. You can see why we're getting that jankiness in our geometry, because the gradual change of color here, it isn't very smooth, so it could be a lot smoother. But we don't actually have to do anything with brushes or anything. There's a really cool tool in the weight manager called auto weight, and that's what we're going to be using. But first we need to go into the commands tab and zero out the current weights. Just hit 0, so now there's no weighting at all. Now we need to go to auto weight, type in the amount of joints that we counted, which is 17. Let's bring the distance here up to about maybe 65% and hit calculate. Now we're getting a lot smoother transitions between our colors. So let's close that now and let's see what the result of that is. So let's try our thumb. So let's rotate that. So you can see we're not getting that jankiness that we were getting before. And let's do our thumb mid. Yeah, so that's looking much better. Let's try the index mid. We'll try the index actually. We'll rotate that so you can see that that's really smooth. Looking much, much better. Let's try the index mid. That was already good anyway. Let's go for our pinky this time. And I actually don't want to bend the pinky down either. I better, we'll go for the middle, and we'll go for the middle mid. You can see that we're getting some really nice bending of the geometry there. So that is looking awesome. So this is nicely rigged and it's ready for animation. And that's what we're going to be doing in the next part of this video. Now, it's important that we undo all of the changes that we've made before we move on to animating. So just hit Control Z a few times until we get our fingers back to its original position. Just like that.